Well, again, good morning, beloved, as we record this, and we're looking at Psalm 124 this morning now. Psalm 124. I'm going to read it and then point out some very encouraging and helpful things here. Again, the psalmist says it's one of those psalms of ascents as they're going on their way to worship to Jerusalem. It's kind of a song that could be sung back then. We have the words, we don't have the tune, so you can make up your own tune to it as you go here, okay? But he says, if it had not been the Lord who has been on our side, let Israel say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side when men rose up against us, then they would have swallowed us up alive when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters would have overwhelmed us. The stream would have gone over our soul. Then the swollen waters would have gone over our soul. Blessed be the Lord who has not given us as prey to their teeth. Our souls escaped as a bird from the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. You know, beloved, a few Psalms ago, when we looked at Psalm 121, we see God's overwhelming care for us, his overriding care and concern, and his omniscience of all of our ways. But now we realize that sometimes God allows things to happen. He allows evil to break through, to touch us or to hurt us, at least temporarily. He allows accidents to happen or other misfortune or things that we didn't figure or plan on. He always has a plan in it all. And more than anything, remember now, God, he will, what would we say, he'll spend some of the things of the temporal world, of our body, of this temporal world, to teach us eternal truths and benefit our soul. In fact, 3 times in just a few verses in this psalm, you'll see that the psalmist uses the word soul for the heart, the inside of us. And so sometimes the body is wounded or offended or stressed, but the outside things are resources, our temporal resources, but God will spend those for his purpose to really benefit and develop our souls. So the time came when this psalmist is writing this, and it's one of David's. And so David went through a lot of different hardships physically and temporal loss and other setbacks and things. But in all of it, he saw God's hand of protection and God's hands of provision and eventually God's hands of deliverance as well. And so much so that it says here, Lord, if you hadn't done that, if you hadn't been there for us, we would have perished. I don't know about you, but as old as I am now, I can look back and see where God has definitively helped me, provided, delivered, directed. I mean, so many milestones in my mind and heart that I have that I can say God is faithful. In fact, there's a song, and you don't want me to sing it, believe me, but so I've heard some ladies sing it beautifully. He's been faithful, so faithful. He's been faithful to me. He's been faithful to us, beloved. It says, if God hadn't been, then the waters would have overwhelmed us. The stream would have gone over our soul. That makes me think of Isaiah chapter 43. And the prophet Isaiah, he would write these words at God's direction here. And it's the Lord speaking to his nation, the people of Israel, to us as well. And in it, though Israel has abandoned their God, they've been very unfaithful, yet God's faithfulness to them doesn't change. And so Isaiah 43, quickly, because it reminds me so much of this passage, says this, but now thus saith the Lord God who created you, O Jacob, and he who formed you, Israel, fear not, I have redeemed you, I have called you by name, you're mine. When you pass through the waters, I'll be with you, and through the rivers of waters, they'll not overflow you. When you walk even through the fire, you'll not be burned, nor the flame scorch you, for I am the Lord your God. And you see, you can remember always that God cares, that he knows that he's there. Blessed be the Lord. He's not given us as prey to our enemies, verse 6. Our souls escaped as a snare from the fowlers. Our help is in verse 8, the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. Back in Psalm 121, which we looked at a few times ago here as well, it says this, I will lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my help. That made me think of an incident back in 1 Kings chapter 20. When the children of Israel were rebelling against God, he was beginning to bring judgment upon them. So he let Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, come upon them to raid them and to destroy a whole city. Ben-Hadad gave threats and everything, but God gave grace. He sent a prophet and says, Benadad will not be able to hurt you. I'll protect you and go before you. Send an army out to meet him. So Israel did. God helped them, and they defeated that army as they had come to attack the city. Well, Benadad and his generals got back to their town and back to their place. They're all kind of bruised up, and they'd lost a number of troops. But they said, the reason why we didn't do good out there is because their God is the God of the hills. Now, if we can meet him in a plain in the valley, we'll destroy Israel. God knew this because he's God. So he sent another prophet saying to the king of Israel, they're going to attack you again. And because they've said that I'm the God only of the hills, guess what? Send out another army, and once again, we'll defeat them. And they obeyed, and they really defeated them very, very completely then. God's proved that he is God everywhere, not just locally like some of those pagan deities claim, but he's God who is everywhere. And once again, that God is the God who can protect us, who can help us. And even if we have to go through the waters of trial or hurt, of disappointment, of testing, even if we have to pass through the fire, we may pass through it, but he'll bring us through it, and we will not be consumed. There was a song written in the 70s, very popular, and it's still sung once in a while in the churches, even here. And I believe his name is Andre Crouch, and he wrote a number of neat worship songs in the 70s and 80s, I guess. But he had one, and it's a kind of a chorus song. It says, through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. Through it all, I've learned to depend on his word. Chuck Swindoll, one of the preachers on the radio, of course, once said this. He says, notice that when he wrote the song, he didn't write it this way. Around it all. See, around it all, we learn absolutely nothing. Through it all, we learn to trust in Jesus. We learn to trust in God.